So let's have a look at TradeSim, a tool for back testing in bull charts. This is based on a presentation I did a couple of years ago. And I should mention, of course, there's no advice. This is for general information. In this session on TradeSim, we'll have a look at what it is. We'll have a look at how it works. We'll have a look at the overview of the process, because there are several steps in getting TradeSim to run in bull charts and a number of things you need to do. We'll have a look at a TradeSim scan, a special type of scan within the bull chart system. And in the demonstration, we'll have a look at how we actually do it. We'll create or modify a TradeSim scan. Last week we created one in the Melbourne session. Tonight we'll have a look at it, save a little bit of time, we'll explain what's in it and maybe modify it. We'll have a look at what we call the trade parameters. We'll run a simulation. That's an important piece of terminology, and we'll view the results. So that's an outline of what we'll do in the next few minutes. First of all, TradeSim, and what is it? It's a software package which is actually a plug-in module that runs with bull charts. There is also a separate TradeSim module that is used as a plug-in for Metastock, for those who have Metastock. Tonight, of course, we're looking at the plug-in module for bull charts. TradeSim is for back testing, so that you can test your own strategy on a particular group of stocks within a specific time period. So it's very important to note those three things. It assumes you have a trading strategy. It assumes or asks for your universe of stocks, and we'll be looking at testing from a start date to an end date, a specific time period. So those key things, very important. How does it work? In bull charts, what we'll do is we'll create a special TradeSim scan, and for those of you familiar with the scan manager and scans in bull charts, you'll notice the little symbols displayed in scan manager. Usually the funnel type symbol is what's shown for a regular scan. The TradeSim symbol indicates the scans that are TradeSim scans. And as I mentioned, you will need to specify a trading strategy, testing time period, and our list of stocks. How does it actually work? Well, once we've set it all up, what we need to do is run a bull chart scan, which will identify possible buy and sell transactions. And that information goes out into a database. And a log file is created. We can check the results in TradeSim. We can check the log file. Then we need to specify our trade parameters. Now, that is done separately, and the trade parameters are things like our starting capital, position size, and a few other things. So that's a step in the process. Once we've done all of that, then that last bullet point says run a TradeSim simulation. So there's a number of steps along the way, and there's no shortcuts. We've got to do all of those things step by step. Here's a slide that tries to demonstrate and explain that the bull chart software will be running on the computer, and TradeSim will be running as well, and they're both separate. Even though TradeSim technically is a module and a plugin for bull charts, they both run separate on the machine. And while bull charts is running, there are interactions between bull charts and TradeSim. So, excuse me, that's important. There are interactions that will be running. In bull charts, as I mentioned, we create a TradeSim scan, run the scan, and then wait for that scan to complete. Now, during that process, TradeSim is doing things separately. It's creating a trade database. Out here, it's creating a trade database and a log file, and the trade database itself will be opened up so that we can have a look at it. And towards the bottom of the list, we review trade parameters and start a simulation. So in a diagrammatic terms, that's an attempt to try to explain those steps and how they all fit together. Now, this is roughly how they fit together side by side. When the TradeSim scan is running, it's going to trigger TradeSim to actually do things, and we need to wait for it to complete. Now, once that's done, what we might do is, as it says down there at the bottom, step 8, review the simulation results. And this is a normal part of the process. We can review the results and have a look at the performance like the equity curve, and then go back into BullCharts to modify the scan in some way. We can modify the selection criteria, the entry, the exit. We might decide to use a different exit approach, or change the list of stocks that we're scanning over, and then repeat that process and go round and round again. So for those who like flowcharts, there's a flowchart depiction of what's involved. This is a screenshot of the BullChart scan definition, and that second tab, normally in BullCharts, that second tab there talks about setting up the criteria for the scan. In a TradeSim scan, it actually says Trade Systems, where you enter a system. Now, what do we mean by system? It's both the entry and exit criteria. And we'll come back and talk about that more in just a moment. When we're running that TradeSim scan, it's important to understand that the trade database is created. I mentioned that before, the trade database is created. But the other thing to be careful about is that if you've already run the scan and TradeSim has created a trade database file, then it potentially overwrites the previous version that you might have created a few minutes ago. So if at any stage you want to save your trade database and keep it rather than continually overwrite it, you need to be consciously thinking about that and renaming it, or choosing a different save name. As I mentioned, a message log is produced during this process, and that's a snapshot of roughly what it looks like. It tells you the steps in the process with a timestamp, including summary messages of what's been happening. And you can have a look at that log. In the bottom left corner of the screen, while that is running, there is this status available, which might tell us that the system is busy or it's ready. So we can keep an eye on the status in the bottom left corner. There's a long list of log messages that can be cleared from time to time. Here's a sample of what errors and warnings look like. There's lots of detail here so that we can have a good look at what's been happening. And when we're ready to open the trade database, there's a button to do that at the bottom of the screen. Now that's not obvious for first-time users. And in the right step in the process, we can open that trade database, and then amongst several screens that are available, look for the trade parameters. And in the trade parameters section, as I mentioned, we've got things like initial capital. Now by default, I think the value is this one shown, 50,000. And there are some other parameters there that we can change, and we can have a chat about those as we go. One of the very important things that we could leave blank to start with is the transaction cost. Now that's basically the brokerage. And a lot of people find that if you leave that at 0, then sometimes the TradeSim scan and the simulation produces results that look fairly favorable, but be very careful, because putting a reasonable cost into this transaction cost field can significantly change the results. So that's something to be careful about. The other thing that's on this window to the left there is the position size model, and there are some options there if you choose to use them. And there are other things on that screen we won't look at just for now. It might complicate things. On the next slide, once we've got all those things specified, we run the TradeSim simulation with the trade simulation button. That's near the top of the screen. We'll have a look at that. And during that process, and when it's completed, there are a number of TradeSim screens that are opened up, or windows, and you get to view all of those, so there's lots of information that is made available. One of the things you can look at is the trade database. Now, the trade database lists down the left-hand column all of the trades numbered from 1 onwards. Across the bottom of the screen, there are options for start entry date and stop entry date. So you can actually change those. And also in that status bar across the bottom is the number of trades selected. Now, if you look at the scroll bar across the bottom of the window there, the scroll bar indicates that there are many, many more columns we could look at. Now the columns here are position, long or short, the symbol, the equity, the security code, the periodicity, weekly, daily, whatever it is you are scanning on, and a number of other columns. And we'll have a quick look at those when we get to that shortly. There's also a trade simulation report that summarizes what's happened during the simulation, and a trade statistics table. One of the key things that you can also look at is there are quite a few graphs, charts of performance. This sample one is net profit versus security. So across the bottom is a list of the stocks that were looked at in this particular sample. And up the left-hand column there, you can see it says net profit percentage. And that looks like 1,000%, 1,500 across the middle, 2,600% at the top. So you can drill down in the simulation to see which stock was profitable compared with others. The trade lock, as I said, a number of screens are available. We won't look at all of them. This is one that is probably the bottom line for many people, and that is the equity curve. This shows the closed trade equity. Up the left-hand column, it says equity in dollars, and in this case it's gone from 0 to 160. Now that's the change in equity. On the right-hand side is the actual total equity value. So at the bottom, starting at 50,000 and going up to 210, that helps understand that the left-hand axis is actually the change in equity. And you can see over time, the date at the bottom left there is 4th of May 2009, and nothing much happened until January 2010, when it started to increase and all of a sudden jumped up in April 2011 in that particular example. So that chart and a number of versions are available as well. There's a couple of warnings here though, and we need to bear this in mind. Your stock universe can make a big difference to the results. Hence, we looked at earlier the percent comparative performance of some of the different indexes. The exit strategy that you choose can make a big difference as well. So that's a consideration. You can try changing your exit strategy. And survivorship bias is not addressed. And for some people, the issue of survivorship is really critical to this sort of thing, because in bull charts, if you try to do this back testing, going back a number of years, there will be some stocks that existed a few years ago that do not exist today and will not be in your scan and will be not back tested against. So survivorship is an issue. Now, for anyone who doesn't understand what we're saying about survivorship, you can Google it and have a look at it later, or towards the end of tonight's session we can have a quick chat about it as well. But survivorship can be an issue. For many people, they simply accept that it's a problem, and many people say it's not a big problem and move on and keep doing the testing. Now there's more information in tutorial guides, PDFs and videos. I've got some stuff on my website, robertbraden.com/bullcharts, and the CompuVision website has got information too. Now the pricing details there were correct the last time I looked. The standard edition is only $198. Once again, we're not recommending that you all race out and buy this. This is only for discussion. So that was a quick look at TradeSim, going through some slides and explaining a bit about what it is, how it works, and the steps in the process. Let's have a look at bull charts. This is my bull charts window. I'll open up the scan manager, bull scan manager, and here we've got and if you look at your scans grouped or sorted by author, notice the tabs across the bottom. I've got an author tab, a category tab, and a name tab. I'm looking at my scans grouped by author because if we scroll down far enough, there's a category here called BCUG, BullCharts User Group, and things like this that I'm accumulating, I'm putting into this folder. And I'll show you how that happens. So when I look at this list of scans grouped by author, Test of Jim Berg is the scan that we created in our meeting last week. I'll just open that scan. Here it is. Have a look at the first tab. The first tab here, the general, has got the scan name, the category My Scans, and author BCUG. It's that bit of text in there that puts this into that sequence on the right hand side where we look at Scan Manager grouped by author. That's where that BCUG entry comes from. So if you're creating a number of scans, you might want to think about exactly what you put in there for the scan name and the category and the author. The other thing that I've done is I've put in here some text that explains a bit about what this is, this month's date, June 2018, and what we're doing with this, so that when I open the scanner in a couple of years' time, I'll remember where it's come from. If I click on the second tab, Trade Systems, here's a trade system for a long position. Before we leave this screen, have a look at what we've got here. We're looking at data period type daily, and we're running the scan as at the latest data update. Now, the latest data update, it says there, is Wednesday, 27 June. Let's open up that and have a look at what it is, exactly what's stored in there. This is the trade system editor. And notice there are 4 tabs on it: entry, exit, stops, and general. And for entry, here's the entry condition. And what we've got here is JB volatility profit taker as an indicator. Start is true. Any bar in the last 10 bars. Now, don't forget, in last month's user group meeting, we created a scan that ran across stocks and looked for this condition on the indicator. Now, just to recap, what I'll do is I'll show that. In the minutes of the May user group meeting, this is what we were looking for. This is just a screenshot of a portion of the window that shows Jim Berg's volatility profit taker indicator. And one of the things that that indicator does is it highlights this start condition based on a number of things in Jim Berg's strategies. So it's that condition that we thought, oh, okay, this often, not always, but often indicates the start of a rising trend, indicates an oversold condition, especially because of RSI 7. And we thought last month, let's scan for that condition. So we were doing that, and that's what this particular criteria does in this scan. We're looking for start as true. The other thing we did last month is we thought, let's add these 2 extra indicators to the chart as scan conditions. We want to see close greater than the 34-bar moving average and closes greater than the same thing 5 bars ago. So to keep it simple, all we've done here is taken the scan from last month, pasted it in here as the entry, and we've also here ticked the box that says delay entry by 1 bar. And further down, enable trade pyramids. For the moment, we've not done that. We've left that as is. Let's have a look at the second tab, exit. In the exit, there are 3 possibilities here. Only the first one is ticked. So that first one is active when we run the scan. The other 2 are not active, but we could choose any of them. The one we've chosen here is JB volatility profit taker, stop is true. So if that condition happens to occur, then that's going to be our exit. Now, as I said, we could change that to be the chandelier exit if we want, or use parabolic SAR. And we could compare all of those one to the other by running this scan successively over time. Stops. In terms of stops, we've said, yes, let's calculate an initial stop, and this is a standard one that's offered as an example, and it simply says in script, for those of you who can read script, that'll be apparent. For those who can't, I'll briefly explain it. It says ATR 14 period. Now ATR, average true range, calculated over 14 periods. And what this says is take 2 times the ATR value. Remember that the average true range is a variation in the price over the last few periods. 2 times that is what's calculated, and then the actual stop value is the latest low minus that 2 times ATR. So that's fairly straightforward. Now the general tab, we won't look at that for the moment. We'll leave that as it is. I'll click on the OK button in the bottom right corner. Have a look at the list of stocks we're scanning over. Let's scan over the XTL, and we'll show how poor this is. XTL, it's like any other scan. Now let's apply and run that over 20 stocks. The XTL is the S&P ASX 20. Now down across the bottom there in the status bar is the progress as normal with any scan, and it says 1% preparing to scan securities. This took a couple of minutes in last week's meeting, and the guys there tried to convince me it's time I bought myself a new laptop. So that's finally been running now, and it says across the bottom there, scan completed in 2 minutes 3 seconds, found 20 from 20. The XTL index, S&P ASX 20, are those 20 stocks. Some of them will look familiar to many people, and we can see here we've got a TradeSim trade database report log, which gives us a summary of what's been happening, date and time, version, and it's listing the stocks and what it's found. And by way of example, the first one here says AMC, for going long, total number of long trades written to the database is 12. Security name, first date scanned, available records, total records. So there's lots of information there for all of those 20 stocks. Now, having reviewed that report log, there's this button down the bottom that says Open Trade Database. There's an option to clear the log if we want. To expedite matters, let's just open the trade database. Now here's the dialog box. So the trade databases automatically get stored in this folder on my C drive, and at the root level, TradeSim data. And the TradeSim database file, it's a .trb file, and it's given the same name as the scan. So this opens up the trade database file. Here's TradeSim opening up. I'll maximize the TradeSim window so that other things in the background aren't a distraction. And we can see there are 3 windows currently. 3 windows available. Trade parameters is one that we'll come back and review shortly. We'll come back and review that one. Here's the trade database manager, which lists all of the transactions that were flagged. If we scroll down to the very bottom, there's 174, and we can untick any of these so that they don't get picked up in the simulation that will run shortly. The third window that's here is the message log, and there are messages there that we can review. Just arrange all of those like that. Let's say we've had a good look at that and we're happy with that. Now we need to look at trade parameters, make some adjustments, and for now we can leave the trading capital at 50,000. Portfolio limit is 100%, so we want happy to be 100% invested. Total maximum open positions is 100 by default. That might be a bit much. Let's just set that to 5 for now. And maximum allowable daily orders, for now let's just make that perhaps 2 to keep things simple. And we'll leave everything else as is, and then the button near the top that says Start Simulation, we'll start the simulation and see what happens. So there's the trade simulation, it's done. That didn't take too long. Let's arrange these windows. The trade log shows us what's happened there. I'll just minimize that one. We'll come back to this particular window in a moment. Here's the trade simulation report. The trade simulation report is a summary of the simulation that's just run. So you can have a look at summary stats there. Trade parameters we don't need, message log we looked at, trade database manager. Let's focus on this window, charts. So here's the closed trade equity. And you can see here that what's happened is over on the right hand side we started off with $50,000. That's that value there with that horizontal line. Our trade equity went from the left hand side went underwater to start with, down by $900, then took off, $2,400 up, and then slowly went back to nil again. So that's in terms of dollar terms what happened during that simulation. And note the time periods. In the bottom left corner we've got 1st of September 2016, and on the right we've got 20th of June this year. So that's over roughly a 2-year period. Now there was an opportunity in there for us to specify those dates, and I've got them somewhere there. We can change those dates to explore different windows in time. There are a number of tabs across the top there. I'll quickly click on each of those just to show what they are. There's the percentage trade equity. There's weekly profit. You can see some weeks we're up, some weeks we're down. Profit amount, weekly return in percentage, then monthly of the same thing, monthly profit, and then monthly return. That was dollars and percent. Then the yearly versions. There's relative drawdown. So looking at the left axis, we can see the relative drawdown in percentage terms. And you can see that that increased to over 2% at one stage. Now, I reckon 2% is not that bad. Here's the underwater equity. Left-hand axis says this is percentage. The amount of capital in trades. So the amount of capital in the trades rose up to only 25,000. So we never got to fully invested. The winning trades in percentage terms is shown on this particular chart. Losing trades on this one, and number of trade positions, maximum of 5. So that's a brief summary of the sorts of charts that are available. We'll go back to BullCharts, and in this scan I'll open up the scan properties. Here's the scan properties. Now that was looking at the S&P ASX 20. Let's not do that again. Let's look at something like the mid-cap 50. I'll just apply that change. Now in the trade system, we were looking at entry price, yeah, exit. Just quickly reviewing this, ignore exit, force exit, close. We could use a chandelier stop. Let's not do that at this stage. We could come back and do that. Let's run that scan again. Now that might take another couple of minutes to run, or because the database has been scanned once already, it might run a bit faster than last time. Okay, so this scan is finished. We've run that across, what did we do? The mid-cap 50, and down the bottom in the status bar it says scan completed in 3 minutes 34, found 50 from 50. And here's a list of those 50 stocks, and that column there in the scan results table is the trade system trades, the number of trades for each stock. Now if I toggle to TradeSim, here's the trade database report. Okay, so what's happened is I should have cleared the log file because it's got the first 20 stocks from the other scan in the top of that down to about there, and then it started and added more into the bottom. Let's clear that before we forget and make it clear for next time. Should we look at anything else in this window? No, we don't want to do that. Let's just simply leave these trade parameters as they are. No, let's have 10 open. Oh no, we'll leave that the same. We wanted to compare apples for apples. Let's run the trade simulation. Here we go. And now we'll run the simulation. Start simulation. It's not going to let me do that. Why? There's a got to reply to this message already. Yes, we want to do that. I was on the other monitor. Now start simulation. Try to make some progress. So that's run already. Let's arrange these windows, have a look at the charts and see what the difference is. So what we've just done is we've run the scan again across a different set of stocks over the mid-cap 50 instead of the top 20, and we've simply gone straight into TradeSim and rerun the simulation, and you can see the difference. It's the same time period. In the bottom left corner there we've got from August 2016, and the bottom right corner is the 14th of June, plus another couple of days up to the 20th. And you can see what's happened across the first half of the chart. In terms of equity, we're about even or a little bit negative, but then we've had this increase in equity in late 2017, early 2018, and it's up fairly high. And the amount that it's up is, looking at the left axis, in the order of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. So total equity went up from 50 to 58. So what we've just done is done a change of stocks to produce that sort of result. Now we could go back and do a number of other things to fiddle with this and retry it. We could look at changing our exit strategy, could look at a different period in time, a whole lot of things. But I think that's probably a good demonstration of TradeSim, how it works, and running it a couple of times over a couple of variations just to compare results and see how easy it is to fiddle. As you saw, I got a little bit lost at one stage trying to find things because there are so many windows available. But if you keep referring to the process, the steps in the process, and follow those steps, and have another look at the slides, the presentation slides we went through, it all should make sense. So there we go. So let's just put in a reasonable brokerage amount of $20, and we'll run exactly that same simulation again to see what sort of a difference that makes. That's finished. That was quick. Quick change to trade parameters. We want to have a look at the charts. Here's that window, or maximize that. And you can see that that's a very similar shaped curve to what we had before, except for the first half of the period there, we're a little bit more underwater than we were before, and our total profit in the last half is only up around $5,000 to $6,000 instead of, I think the last figure was about $8,000. So changing something like that, adding brokerage into the simulation, can make a significant difference.